Okay friends, welcome to part 2 of our video presentation on chapter 7. In this part we will talk about the strategic impact of the internet on individual companies and entire industries. And in this discussion we'll be using mostly the so-called Michael Porter's 5-force model that is depicted right here. But before we go into the subject matter, before we start discussing the model and how this model can be used to understand and analyze impact of the internet on individual companies and industries, I'll give you some background about this framework and about this analysis. This framework, as I said before, was created by somebody named Michael Porter. Okay. Now, Michael Porter, he is a well-known business professor from Harvard Business School. In fact, I would say he's like one of the most well-known and most influential business school professors in the world. And Michael Porter, he is credited with creating, or he's widely considered to be like one of the founding scholars for the entire field of strategy. So largely, most of the things that Michael Porter did, they were related to the field of strategy. Now, what is strategy? I'm sure there can be many definitions, and as you probably know, there are classes on strategy. But strategy, I would say that in essence, strategy can be defined as a high-level plan for competing within a particular industry. So, strategy is like a high-level plan on competing within an industry. This can be contrasted, I would say the opposite of strategy or something that is far away from strategy are the so-called operational decisions. Now, operational decisions or operational actions or tactics, they're different from strategic decisions or strategic actions because, first of all, operational actions, they're very specific, they're small, and also they are not long-term. Now, strategies are typically high-level and long-term, okay? Now, the other thing that's probably that needs to be explained is why do you need to compete? Well, as it turns out, you cannot make money without competing as an organization, as a company. You cannot be profitable without competing because no matter what kind of idea you have, no matter what kind of product or service you're offering, there will be competition. Even if you come up with something brand new, some kind of innovative idea or innovative product, within a few years, if other companies see that you're making profit from that product or that particular service, they'll start competing with you. So the question becomes, how do you compete? Because if you don't compete, other companies will come in and they will offer better products, better services, and they will steal your customers, depriving you of any opportunity to make money. So that's the central question of the field of strategy. How do you compete with other companies, or how do you make money? Because as I hopefully was able to persuade you just a second earlier, you cannot make money without being competitive, without competing with other companies. That's the nature of business. If you make money, other companies will come in and they want to have a piece of that steak that you currently have. Okay. So the central question of the field of strategy is how do you compete? Now, what Michael Porter did with this 5-force framework, which is right here, he basically said that sometimes competition within an industry is shaped by the following 5 forces. Okay, and again, when we say competition, we're really kind of alluding at the question of profitability. So what he was saying that profitability within an industry is shaped by external factors to some extent, right? More specifically, it's shaped by those external forces that can impact a particular industry, and we'll talk about those forces briefly without making any references to the internet, just to explain what this framework is all about. Well, first of all, profitability or competition within an industry is influenced by the competitors or the current level of competition among other companies. Now, if you think about it, it makes sense. If there are a lot of competitors within your industry, meaning a lot of other companies that are competing pretty much for the same kind of customer segment, and they are very competitive, meaning the competition is fierce, they're always trying to find ways to outperform other companies within the industry, then of course it will create a negative impact for your own profitability, because the more competitors you have, the more aggressive, the more competitive they are, the harder it is to be competitive and to make money within that particular industry. So what I just told you, it seems to be like a threat coming from that competitor's force, but it can be a positive. I mean, it can be an opportunity. As opposed to being a threat, it can also be an opportunity, because if you find an industry where the number of competitors is low and they're not very aggressive, they're kind of relaxed, they try not to steal each other market share, then it becomes an opportunity. It's easier to make money in that kind of friendly industry, versus an industry where there's a lot of competition. If you think of, this force alone kind of explains a lot about business. Like, a lot of time when people want to start their own business, they think about, let's say opening a restaurant or opening a small store. Now, in a way, it's a good idea because it's relatively easy to open a store or start a restaurant, but it's also a bad idea because in those kind of industries, competition is always fierce because there are so many people, selling food and so many people, selling all kinds of things, from clothing to electronics, that it's very hard to be competitive. I mean, it's very hard to offer something unique in that market, and it's very hard to make money because of that competition. The profit margins in those industries like restaurant or retail are typically very low. So that force alone explains a lot as to why so many small shops and small restaurants eventually fail, because the competition is just fierce. The second force that we will discuss, substitute products. What this force means, it means in some industries there are a lot of substitutes. For example, if you're selling coffee, then a possible substitute for your product would be tea, right? Now, this is a very important force because if you sell something within an industry that has a lot of substitutes, then it becomes harder for you to make money within that industry because it limits your profit potential. For example, if you're selling coffee and you want to raise your price to improve your profit margins, then at some point people will say, you know what, I like coffee very much, but because it's so expensive, I'll go and buy tea instead, right? So this can be a threat. On the other hand, if within your industry there are not too many substitutes or there are no substitutes, then it makes it easier for you to be competitive or to make money. A classic example of an industry where there are no substitutes is the insulin industry, meaning the industry that produces drugs or injection drugs for those people who have diabetes, right? Like it or not, but there are no substitutes for insulin, right? So if you have diabetes, God forbid, then you need to buy insulin and you don't have any substitutes. And that's and not only within this insulin industry, but all other medical industries or sub-industries, they're often abusing that kind of power that they have because health is very important to every individual. So if there's one particular drug that you need to buy in order to improve your health, then of course you will buy it. And you're not going to say, insulin is too expensive, I'm not going to buy it, because that will have like a very negative impact on your health, right? But those industries, they tend to be very profitable when there are no substitutes available. Another industry that has very limited substitutes is the tobacco industry. I mean, a lot of people, they find tobacco to be so addictive, they cannot substitute tobacco with anything else. For example, a smoker, a person who is an addict, who is hooked on smoking, he cannot say, instead of smoking cigarettes, I will drink Pepsi. I mean, it just doesn't work that way, right? So that's why no matter how high the price is for a pack of cigarettes, the smokers will still go and buy it because there are no substitutes. They cannot buy like a cheaper alternative to tobacco, unfortunately, right? Cheaper and healthier. I wish those smokers could have a cheaper and healthier alternative to their habit. But there's no alternative. For a lot of them, they cannot substitute tobacco with anything else, and that's why those tobacco companies can be very profitable, because no matter what kind of prices they set, people will still buy it simply because they're addicted. Then we have new market entrance force. Again, this force can be a threat and an opportunity. Now, in some industries, it's very hard to enter that particular industry. An example would be, let's say, airline business, meaning companies that produce airliners. Now, you know that in the world there's only a handful of companies that produce passenger jets. For example, Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier. There's just a few of them, right? And you know why? Because it's very hard to enter that market. I mean, in order to enter that market and start producing airliners, you need to invest a lot into infrastructure and technologies. And that's why if you read about history of Airbus, now Airbus is like a European competitor to Boeing, which is an American manufacturer of airliners. Now, Airbus was actually was created by consortium of states, of governments, of several countries in Europe. I just remember one of them, which is France, but there were like several other countries. So you see, it took several countries to put together their financial resources to establish a competitor to Boeing. Now, needless to say, an average individual may not be able to pull together that kind of capital required to establish a company that can compete with Airbus and Boeing. Now, of course, it's good if you own a business that is in that kind of industry, because it limits abilities of other companies to come in and compete with you. And if they cannot come in, if they cannot enter your market and compete with you, it means that you can protect your own profit margins. You can protect your own competitiveness. Then we have something called the bargaining power of suppliers. Now, in some industries, suppliers are very few. They supply something that cannot be found in abundance from other sources. And because of that, they have a lot of bargaining power over firms within that industry. For example, let's say the industry that we're talking about is a cell phone industry, and what's needed for producing cell phones are batteries. And batteries, they use a particular, I forgot the, just escaped my mind. I think, well, I don't think it's, maybe it is lithium. There are those lithium batteries that are used for cell phones. And lithium is a mineral that cannot be found in abundance in nature. I mean, I think there are only a handful of sources of lithium, and I think most of them are in Asia. So because of that, those suppliers of lithium, or whatever the name of that chemical that is used to produce batteries for cell phones, they have a lot of bargaining power over cell phone manufacturers, because cell phone manufacturers, they don't have many options. So if suppliers of lithium decide to increase their prices, then manufacturers of cell phones, they don't have anywhere else to go. They need to buy those supplies, those products from lithium manufacturers, because otherwise, they won't be able to produce their own products. So in that case, suppliers is a threat. But in some industries, suppliers that can be found in abundance. For example, if your industry is retailing and you're talking about, you want somebody to supply milk for your stores, for your grocery stores, then milk suppliers that can be found in abundance. So in that case, this is more of a positive force. So this becomes an opportunity for you as opposed to being a threat. And then there is a force of customers, which is kind of similar to suppliers. In some industries, customers are very few, and because they're very few, you don't have anywhere to go. For example, if you lose contract, or if you lose business with your existing customers, you cannot easily find other customers or other buyers for your product or service. So if that's the case, then customers is a force that is a threat to you, because if you increase your price too much, then customers will have other options. They will go to other companies to purchase whatever they need, and you will lose money, right? So having customers with high bargaining power, and typically that happens when the number of customers is very small, is actually a threat. However, if you're in an industry where there are a lot of customers, meaning there are a lot of people that can buy things for you, then it's more like of an opportunity, meaning those customers, they cannot exert much power over you. They don't have much bargaining power, so they cannot drive your prices down. An example of that would be like, let's say, auto manufacturing industry. More specific, not auto manufacturing industry in general, but that industry of, let's say, suppliers of car windshields, right? So if you're in that kind of industry, then you only have like a handful of customers, meaning you can only sell your product to those big auto manufacturers. And there are quite a few auto manufacturers out there, but you understand that the number is not that great. So basically, it kind of limits your market. So you either sell it to those few main auto manufacturers, or you have nowhere else to go. So because of that, auto manufacturers have a lot of bargaining power over you, and they will not like it if you increase your prices, because they know that there are only a few buyers that can buy those windshields in high volumes, and there are a lot of companies that can produce windshields. Here in the United States, in Asia, anywhere else, right? In South America, in North America, they can all produce windshields. So because of that, they will ask you to decrease your prices, and that's something that will cut into your competitiveness, meaning profits at the end of the day. You won't be able to make as much money. Okay. So this is the essence of the five force framework. Again, in essence, what this 5 force framework tells you, it tells you that profitability within certain industries is shaped by certain external forces or external factors. Now, if we apply this framework to the internet, it turns out that internet has altered competition and profitability in a lot of companies by influencing those 5 forces. Okay. So, for example, in some industries, internet was an opportunity. It had like a positive impact on competitiveness and profitability. For example, some companies were able to use internet to buy things online. Now, if they buy things online, let's say car manufacturers such as Ford decides to buy supplies online, then they exert greater power over suppliers of parts, because hundreds of suppliers of brakes and windshields can be hooked on a particular website, can register on a particular website, and then Ford has a lot of choices. I mean, they can select the best price and the best quality combination. Also, some companies benefited from the internet because it expanded their market. Because if you're selling something online, in theory, you can sell your product or service to anybody around the globe who has access to the internet and a credit card. Also, some companies were able to eliminate intermediaries. Instead of distributing their products through physical retail locations, let's say, if we talk about Dell, instead of selling their computers through Best Buy and Walmart, they started selling computers directly. That expanded their market share and also enabled them to decrease the prices of their products. So some industries, they benefited from some industries, and some companies they experienced like a big positive boost coming from the internet and related technologies. But in some industries and for some companies, internet became a threat. For example, a lot of industries, when they started selling things online, they kind of migrated from competition based on quality to competition based on price. There's something about internet that makes that enables, that encourages competition based on price. And I think what happens is that it's visibility, because on the internet it's easy to compare prices. I mean, you just go from website to website, and there are all those intermediary websites, like for example AutoTrader, where you have like all those companies advertising cars that they have for sale. So in that case, it's easy to compare prices, and it's very hard to kind of justify a high price. So that drove competition towards price, and a lot of companies started, because they started doing business on the internet, they started decreasing their prices, and naturally that cut into their profitability, into their profit margin, and into their ability to make money. Also, the other thing that happens when you do business online, you're competing with pretty much everybody. I mean, imagine if you have a small store in a small town selling bicycles. In a way, you're limited because you have like a limited market. But on the other hand, you're also protected from competitors, because if you start selling your bikes online, now that you're competing with all those stores that sell bikes online across the globe, including China, including Europe, including North America, right? So now you have a lot of competition. If you have a lot of competition, you need to compete. You need to lower your prices, and that's something that cut into profits of a lot of companies. Also, internet reduces traditional barriers. Like, for example, in the old days, if you want to run like a small-scale consulting business, let's say you want to advise people on managerial issues or on tax issues, you had to invest in office, right? But nowadays, a lot of people, like a lot of independent consultants in the field of technology or management consultants, all they do, they just create a website, and that's it, right? So it's easier. It became easier to enter certain industries with the help of internet. And of course, if you're in that kind of line of business, if you're in that kind of industry where internet removed some of the entry barriers, then it's not good for your profitability, because lowering barriers means that you will have more companies coming in and competing with you. And then, because of, probably number 1 and number 2 and 3, customers have more bargaining power nowadays. For example, if you want to buy electronics, there are so many sources online that you can go to buy that particular piece of electronics. And that limits bargaining power of companies like Best Buy. I mean, they cannot charge you a price that is too high, because as soon as you feel that they're overcharging you, you go somewhere else. And instead of buying in a Best Buy store, let's say you buy something through Amazon or through eBay, right? So in some industries, for some companies, internet had rather negative impact. The internet made it harder for companies to be competitive and to make money. Now, arguably, this is something that a lot of companies did not fully understand, and a lot of investors did not fully understand. And because of that, there was the so-called dot-com meltdown or dot-com bubble crash. I think it happened like somewhere between in the early 2000s, or somewhere between like year 2000 and 2001, somewhere there. So basically, what happened was that prior to the year 2000 or 2001, throughout late 1990s, investors were pouring huge amounts of capital into those .coms because they believe that you cannot go wrong. You cannot go wrong by investing into internet companies. Now, as it turned out, that you can go wrong. In fact, again, if you go back to this framework, it looks like in some industries, internet business actually had a negative impact. It had a negative impact on profitability. So because of that, some industries, some companies, they were not worthwhile to invest into. So that led to this disillusionment or disappointment of investors with certain internet companies. They started dumping that stock, they started selling that stock, and that led to this huge, stock market crash that, destroyed like almost, I think, 50% of market value of U.S. companies, and it had like a profound impact worldwide. Now, this meltdown, it was a negative thing. A lot of people lost their money, a lot of companies went bankrupt, but it was also a positive phenomenon because the public, the investors, technology entrepreneurs, they learned something. They learned something about business and doing business online. And one of the key things that they learned was that, technology never overrides the most fundamental business considerations. Meaning, business should always come first, and technology should always come second. Now, smart companies, the ones who survived that .com meltdown or .com bubble crash, were the ones like Amazon. Now, Amazon, I told you before, it was used as an example of a flagship .com company, of a flagship internet company. But if you listen to what the founders of Amazon have to say, you'll see that from the very beginning, their business was not about internet. Their business was about customers, about serving customers. The essence of their business model is not the internet. The essence of their business model is offering customers an opportunity to browse through millions of book titles and to buy books without leaving the premises of their house. So they give choice, they give convenience, they give lower prices to their customers. That's the essence of their business. Creating a website that can be used for selling books and just putting it online is not enough to build a profitable online business, right? So business fundamentals comes first. In fact, as it is argued in this article that I gave you earlier by Michael Porter, that talks about strategy and the internet. By the way, read this article if you want. If you want to get, if you want like an in-depth analysis of the impact of the internet on industries through the 5-force model, and also another fundamental framework of Michael Porter, which is the value chain model that looks at the issue of competitiveness and profitability from the inside. So if you want to learn more about Michael Porter's frameworks, I would say also the field of strategy as a whole, because those two frameworks, they largely define the field of strategy. So if you want to learn more about the field of strategy and also how those frameworks can be used to understand the impact of the internet on industries and companies, then I suggest you read this article that I posted earlier. And that's what Michael Porter says. The internet, this whole hype surrounding internet has led many companies, .coms and non.coms, to make bad decisions. And what Michael Porter is saying that, here it is, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Michael Porter argued that internet does not change everything. It doesn't change business fundamentals. In fact, he says that because of the turbulence that the internet is creating across different industries, it is more important than ever for companies to distinguish themselves through strategy. Okay, so this article kind of goes in much more detail about the strategic impact on the internet. I suggest you read it, as a optional or additional reading for chapter 7. So, a lot of the lessons, a lot of the useful lessons as to the strategic impact of the internet. Were summarized in this article, but as I said, the most fundamental lesson is that internet does not change everything. Certain things change, but a lot of things remain the same. So this is just like one lesson, but some other things that changed as a result of the .com bubble meltdown were as follows. Instead of being technology-driven, things became business-driven. I mean, I already explained that, right? Investors realized that they shouldn't look at the technology behind companies. They should look at the business potential behind companies. Meaning, we don't care what kind of sophisticated online technology you have, whether you're using Flash or Java. You need to look at the business potential first. That is, ability of companies to generate profits. A lot of those companies that were valued at millions and billions of dollars, before the .com meltdown, they didn't generate any profit. I mean, they had a website, they were attracting a lot of visitors, but they couldn't generate profit. So so yeah, so no more like potential of technology. You know, everybody was focusing after the dot-com meltdown on profit generation of technology. Also, the tax rules have changed as a result of that meltdown, because I guess the government felt that there was too much freedom, and that led to the crash. So there was some degree of regulation. I think some states, they introduced sales tax. Then you know, the other thing that was discovered is that you know, creating a website and uploading it to a web server is not enough to build a viable business. In fact, it was discovered that some of the traditional brick and mortar companies, they were able to kind of step in after this dot-com debacle and establish viable businesses. Now, Staples.com comes as an example of that. They already had their distribution infrastructure, their retailing infrastructure, and then they just started using internet as one additional channel to supplement their business, not to replace their business. And those companies, they have been quite successful, more successful than all those pure dot-coms. Again, I would like to bring this example of Amazon. Amazon is not like a pure .com, because they did invest a lot into this normal warehousing infrastructure, because they figure out that having a website that lists books is not enough. They need to make sure that those books are delivered promptly, that there are no mistakes in order delivery. So they had to invest into physical infrastructure as well. So there was this realization that pure plays, you know, pure internet models are not as attractive, you know, as they seem to be. So those models, they have to be supplemented by, often need to be supplemented by traditional infrastructure that would make this, you know, business model built online viable. Okay, friends. So this slide concludes part 2 of our video presentation on e-business systems. So thank you for listening.